Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm joined with Father McMahon for the much-awaited, it was top 10 about how we were promoting it, but it's going to be top 12.
12 years, 12 top players.
Do you want to tell the fans at home what we're going to be doing over the next few videos here?
Well, I figured that being my final year and being the one constant in the La Salette basketball constellation, having seen almost every single game over the course of the 12 years, seen them, and anyone who's attended one have also made my presence felt at almost all of them in a more or less vociferous way. Actually spending 3 years as a coach as well. Like I've mentioned that in past broadcasts, that took a few years off my life, as well as a few years off a number of the players' lives. But we thought that being the last year, we should look at get a top 10 or now a top 12 all-time list. We've been, it's not just a subjective fabrication. We've done a lot of stat checking and rebounds, assists, scoring, high scorers, the highest scorers, etc. And I think we've come up with the definitive top 12. There could be some debate, but I think it's the definitive top 12.
Well, some of the debate will come from the fact that there were those guys at the very, very beginning, perhaps didn't have the full benefit of 4 years playing for La Salette, and those guys are going to get honorable mentions. Do you want to start with your 2 honorable mentions?
Yes, I think that's a good point. The program itself has obviously gotten much improved over the years, and the facilities, the coaching, etc. The summer programs, the cooperation on the part of the parents to help with that. A couple of fathers in particular, mainly Matt Deister, who's been instrumental in getting summer programs working out for the boys down in Kansas City. Also Mark Ranowski, who has helped in that, and then the moms who've helped with the cooking, etc. However, the very beginning was really just scrapping it together, so it's difficult to put those put them into the perspective. I do think the 2 honorable mentions coming from the first year, the very first captain, who was Nathan Sick, number 24, and probably our all-time gunner, the now Father James Carlisle, number 5. I put them. They would have potentially, if they had the benefit of another few years and the ability to have practiced more, etc., could have made it into the top 12. But I'm going to make them the honorable mentions. Again, Father James Carlisle, number 5. Probably, if we kept that statistic at the time, as the all-time leading shot taker. There wasn't it was basically with Carl a touch and shoot. We have some guys like that now. Though
Is that a Carlisle tradition?
It's a bit, yeah. It's a bit distributed. Still, the very first game we ever played on December 6, 2005, James, now Father Carlisle, scored the very first point. He obviously took the very first shot, and many after that. I believe he scored over 20 points, maybe even 25 in that first game to lead us to our very first victory. The first game in the 100-year history or 80-year history of the Coliseum. First interscholastic game. We beat the Danville First Baptists 54-52, I believe. He was instrumental in that particular victory. Also, very importantly, instrumental in the very first Corona Maria, our matchup with St. Mary's that year, the beginning of the great rivalry. He also scored 20, I believe, in that game. Nathan Sick, who was the very first captain at La Salette, and also an all-state rugby player, another just fantastic athlete, but no real basketball experience, but played, certainly would have been, I think, potentially someone would have made the top 12 list. They need to be mentioned just as the godfathers of the program, how it all started, the very first 2 stars. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure it was the first quarter, I think it might have been the first half of that St. Mary's game, James and Nathan scored all of our points except for 1 basket at the buzzer by Michael Dolan, God rest his soul, who's passed away. So those 2 had, and if I'm not incorrect, I would say 23 or 21 out of the first 23 points in that game to give us a 10-point lead, which we were able to hold on to and win that first Corona 53-48. So I give them they need to be mentioned and honorably mentioned.
I think importantly for the people to know, the News Gazette article from that first ever home game has a very grainy picture of Father Rigby.
Grainy picture of Father Rigby, which is basically the way he played. quite grainy over the course of his 2 years, although in his own mind I'm sure it's not quite as grainy, but it was grainy and quite grainy.
And both Father James Carlisle and Nathan Sick get shout-outs in that article as well. I think Father James Carlisle was the top scorer, top rebounder in that game, first game in the Coliseum.
Yes.
Very exciting piece of history going on the wall. Next, let's get to number 12.
Okay, number 12 is, we're going with at 12, Preston Garneau, number 35. Preston's been working here, came back and worked for a semester for us this year before moving on to another job. And Preston, lefty, not someone like most of our players had never really played basketball before coming to the academy. Worked hard, got decent, athletically pretty good. Again, a little bit of a shifty lefty, a nervous lefty. Let's say that, quite nervous until he finally realized he was actually a good player. Preston's maybe his most notable, and you know I am not big on dunking. It's only 2 points, and it's exaggerated, especially in the mind of high school kids who don't know much about the game. But Preston is notably the very first one ever to dunk in a game, the Coliseum. Did it in his very last game in a blowout against Immaculate Conception from Norwood, Ohio. And he was so excited that he then hung on the rim and was given a tactical assessment. Tactical as well. Preston, though, his high game was 25, and he finished his career probably a little higher, but he's currently 8th all-time with over 500 points. So I would say Preston clocks in at number 12.
All right, and then next we'll move to number 11, who is Adam Gates. He did a little bit better than Preston in his game high.
Adam Gates was his game high was 27. He got that against John Paul II, school from Indiana. Adam ended his career with close to 500 points, and when he did, he was the La Salette high scorer until the other players came along subsequently through the years, having more games, etc. Adam is another one who probably would have profited from a couple more years of basketball. Someone else who came a bit short, very tiny until the senior year. When he got a little bit more solid. Adam wore number 24, and he was the captain of the team in 2009, 2008, 2009. Shifty point guard, very good shooter. Came out in the big games. Played really well against St. Mary's in the Corona Maria that year, his senior year, as well as his junior year. So he was a 2-year starter. Again, a good point guard, quick, got his shot off. Liked to shoot, but was not someone who was of the Carlisle strain, who every touch became a shot. He also distributed well, especially in his junior year when he had Eric Populus and some other people who could play, who could also score. It was a nice transition for him, going from primarily a point guard shooting, passing, to then being the primary scorer in 2009. But even then, that year, Michael Middlemore came in, who was probably the main scorer. So in both of his years, Adam wasn't the first scorer, probably would have been our second offensive threat in terms of scoring, but he had a nice balance of assists and scoring. So I put Adam at number 11.
Well, folks, those are our honorable mentions and our 11 and 12. Coming up in future videos, we got the top 10, so please check in with us on our YouTube channel and during the half times of our games. Thank you for joining me, Father.
Go ahead, Joe.
And we'll see you guys again soon.